They didn't just forget to invite me. They erased me from my own son's wedding. The parking lot was already full of black SUVs and pastel dresses when I got there. The air smelled like perfume and panic. I had my suit pressed, the same one I wore when I buried my wife 12 years ago. I thought she'd be proud today. "Sir, may I help you?" the security guy asked. "I'm the father of the groom," I said. He checked a list on a clipboard, frowning. "Your name's not here, sir. Guests of the groom are handled by the planner." I gave him my ID anyway, like logic might fix humiliation. He called someone on his earpiece, nodded twice, then looked at me differently, the way people look at a stray dog near a banquet. "Ma'am says you're not cleared." "I'm sorry." Through the glass doors, I could see my son, Ethan, adjusting his tie while the photographer lined up his fiancé's family for pictures. She glanced my way once, then turned back, smiling wide. My throat didn't tighten. My pulse didn't rise. I just pulled out my phone. Venue invoice. Paid by Robert Keller Construction, LLC. Payment link, cancel transaction. Confirm. And just like that, the building holding my absence went unpaid. Justice doesn't shout. Sometimes it just stops the money. And before I tell you what happened next, help me reach 1,000 subscribers by hitting that subscribe button. It's completely free for you, but it means so much to me. Thank you, truly, for helping out. The sound that followed wasn't anger. It was the wind hitting the chapel doors when they shut me out. You'd think being humiliated would feel loud, but it was quiet. That's the trick of betrayal. It steals your volume before your dignity. I walked back to my truck, the one I'd used to deliver the lumber that built the wedding deck behind that venue. It was supposed to face the lake at sunset. I'd made sure of that when I helped them negotiate the design. I stood by the tailgate and watched guests file in, holding hands, touching dresses like happiness was contagious. Ethan's best man, Tyler, saw me from a distance. He waved, small, guilty, fast. I didn't wave back. There's a kind of silence that teaches faster than words. By the time I started the engine, my hands had stopped shaking. The same hands that once taught Ethan how to sand a board, how to hold a hammer like it had a purpose. He was 12 then, proud of his first birdhouse. I still have it in my shed, the nails crooked but determined. That's what I built my life around, crooked things that still hold. On the drive home, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. I answered anyway. "Robert?" It was Clara, the wedding planner. Her voice was syrup over steel. "I'm so sorry for the confusion earlier. There was a miscommunication about seating. The bride's family requested..." "Requested what?" I asked. "That only immediate family be present during the ceremony," she said. "I'm his immediate family," I said. She hesitated. "They meant, immediate on the couple's side. His wife's family's list was prioritized for the photography window." "That's fine," I said, cutting her off. "You'll want to check your payment log before you start serving champagne." "Excuse me. I canceled the final payment on your venue, $45,000. That money's going back where it came from." "Sir, that's non-refundable." "Nothing's non-refundable when the account holder changes their mind," I said. I hung up and rolled down the window. The Texas air was hot enough to make asphalt sweat. I let it hit my face like truth. The first thing I did when I got home was take off the tie. It wasn't just fabric. It was a leash I'd been wearing for 2 years. Ever since Ethan started dating Madison, and her family began turning my son into a prop. Her father owned dealerships. Her mother ran charity luncheons where everyone whispered old money like it was a spell. When they first met me, I was Robert Keller, the builder. Later, I became Bob, Ethan's dad. He's retired now. They said it like retirement was a sickness. I built half this town's homes. I paid for Ethan's degree, for his down payment, and for the ring he swore he'd repay me for. He never did. I didn't press it. That's not what fathers do. Fathers let their sons make mistakes, but they don't expect to be uninvited to the consequences. By dusk, my porch smelled like cedar and old regret. I sat there with my coffee gone cold, watching the sun drop behind the mesquite trees. My phone buzzed again, this time a text from Ethan. "Dad, I told them you'd understand. Please don't make this worse." No sorry. No come back. Just public relations from my own blood. I typed nothing back. I just scrolled through the email receipts from the wedding contracts. Caterer, floral, live band, venue, all handled by my company account. I'd paid them piecemeal as a gift, every check signed with the same name that now wasn't on the guest list. I opened my business banking app and started untangling what I could reverse. Some charges were too old, some ironclad, but the big one, the venue's balance, was gone within minutes. The next day, I got a call from the venue owner himself. "Mr. Keller, I think there's been a misunderstanding," he started. "We received notice that your payment's been disputed." "No misunderstanding," I said. "You hosted a wedding where the payer was told he wasn't welcome. That violates your contract under good faith and client access. You'll want to read your fine print." He went quiet. "Sir, we'll have to contact—" "You'll contact your conscience," I said, then hung up. I didn't laugh. I didn't even smile. What people don't understand about revenge is that it's never the opposite of sadness. It's the natural evolution of silence. Later that night, I found the wedding livestream link buried in my email. It had been sent to guests and family. I clicked it. The screen showed the couple standing under an arch of white roses, my lumber underneath the platform, my money paying for the arch. The officiant said, "Who gives this woman to this man?" And Madison's father stepped forward. "Not my son, not me." Her father handed her off with a grin, and Ethan, my Ethan, nodded like the world had been set right. That was the first crack. I closed the laptop, turned off the light, and sat there until I could hear the crickets again. I thought of my wife, gone 12 years, and how she'd have said, "Robert, sometimes you let the fire run its course." So I did. Tomorrow, I'd make sure that every document, every contract, and every dollar had my truth written on it. Justice doesn't shout. It signs its name and waits. 2 days after the wedding, my face showed up on Facebook before I'd even shaved. A post from Madison's aunt said, "Some people just can't let go. Poor Ethan had to deal with his father's outburst before walking down the aisle." Outburst. That word hit me harder than the locked door. By noon, half the town had liked it, and the comments bloomed like weeds. Wasn't he the contractor? He's been bitter since his wife passed. He's one of those dads who can't move on. You can't fight a rumor head on. It's like trying to punch fog. It just wraps around you and smells like smoke. I didn't comment. I didn't even call Ethan. I just took a screenshot and filed it into a new folder. Wedding evidence. Under it, I saved the contracts, invoices, screenshots, and a short note. They lied first. That same evening, a letter slid under my door. Thick envelope, gold-embossed return address from the Madison family office. Inside was a printed statement from their lawyer. "Mr. Keller, we request that you refrain from contacting or visiting Ethan and Madison Keller, as your recent behavior at their wedding caused emotional distress to the couple and guests. Further actions may constitute harassment." There it was, the word they'd been building toward. Harassment. The ink smelled expensive, like guilt bought wholesale. I poured myself a glass of water, sat down, and reread it slowly. Then I smiled, because nothing screams fear like a cease and desist sent to the man who paid for the champagne. I called Carson, my attorney, the same woman who'd helped me draft my construction contracts. "They're playing defense," she said after I read the letter aloud. "They're trying to preempt liability if you dispute payments." "Good," I said. "Let's make them define what behavior means." She chuckled. "Robert, you're enjoying this too much." "I'm not," I said. "I just prefer written lies over spoken ones." She told me to stay quiet, document, don't react. "Let silence do the heavy lifting," she said. That night, I couldn't sleep. I walked into the garage, the smell of oil and dust settling like memory. On a high shelf sat a shoebox with my wife's handwriting on the lid. Ethan's keepsakes. I hadn't opened it in years. Inside were drawings, an old baseball glove, and a folded note she'd written when Ethan turned 15. If you ever lose each other, find the version that still remembers love. I folded the note again and slipped it into my pocket. That became token number 1, memory, not to forgive, to remember what the fight was for. The next morning I went into town. People looked at me differently, polite, cautious, the way you look at someone who might explode. The barista at the cafe smiled too fast. "Heard about the wedding?" she said softly. "Family stuff's rough." "Family's supposed to be rough," I said. "That's how you know it's real." She didn't know what to say after that. On Main Street, I passed Trent, Madison's father. He was shaking hands with the mayor in front of the dealership. His face was the kind of tan you buy. When he spotted me, he smiled, the politician's version of pity. "Robert," he said, "tough weekend? Huh? You could say that." I told Ethan we'd keep things cordial. No bad blood. Weddings can get emotional. "Not for everyone," I said. He laughed like he'd earned it. "Look, don't make this harder. The kids are starting their life. Let them. You'll see your grandkids when the time's right." "When it's convenient," I said. "Exactly," he said, missing the point completely. Then he clapped my shoulder. That move men use when they want to prove dominance disguised as empathy. "Try to remember, Robert. Class isn't about money." I looked him right in the eye. "You're right," I said. "That's why you'll never have it." He blinked, once, slow, then smiled again, smaller. "Careful, old man. Words like that can sound like threats." "Not if you can afford to back them," I said. He turned away. But I saw the twitch in his jaw, the one people get when they realize the other man's not bluffing. That night, I wrote another note in my folder. 214. Threat disguised as courtesy. Witnessed in public. Logged. I wasn't keeping a diary. I was building a case. 2 weeks passed before Ethan finally called. His voice was thin, tired, like someone whose conscience hadn't slept. "Dad, things got out of hand. You didn't have to cancel the venue. Madison's family's furious." "I didn't cancel the wedding," I said. "Just my contribution to the illusion." He sighed. "They think you embarrassed them on purpose." "Embarrassment requires attention." I walked away. "Mom would have wanted peace," he said quietly. I let that hang for a second. "Your mother wanted decency," I said. "There's a difference." Silence on the line, then softer. "They said you were drinking that day." There it was, the lie's sharp edge. "I haven't touched a drop since your mom's funeral," I said. "But it sounds like they're trying to build a story. Tell me, son, when they handed her off at the altar, did they say my name at all?" He didn't answer, the kind of silence that breaks bones. "Ethan," I said, quieter now, "if you let people rewrite the truth, one day you won't recognize the version of yourself in their story." He started to say something, then stopped. "I can't do this right now." "I know," I said. "You'll call when you can." When the line went dead, I realized something. His silence wasn't loyalty to them. It was fear of me becoming right too soon. So I waited, but I didn't wait idle. I drove to the county clerk's office and filed a request for transaction statements and contractor liens related to the venue construction. Legally, they had to provide a paper trail if my business name appeared on any permit. It did. 5 times. That was my proof. Not for revenge, for order. The clerk looked up from her computer. "You want certified copies?" "Everyone," I said. I drove home with the documents on the passenger seat. The way you carry a child who finally came home after being lost too long. At the house, the porch light flickered once, an old bulb. I left it that way. Some things deserve a little unsteadiness. I scanned each page, time-stamped it, and backed it up to a flash drive. Token number 2, evidence. When I was done, I poured myself another glass of water and watched the Texas horizon go red. I thought about how fires start, not from rage, but from friction ignored. That's when I decided. No shouting, no begging, no vengeance, just paper, silence, and time. Because the thing about lies, they rot faster than wood, and I build houses that last. I didn't call Ethan again. I didn't text. I just started printing. Silence doesn't mean surrender. It means I've moved to a higher floor of the same fight. The sound of my old HP printer filled the kitchen that morning. Page after page slid out. Contracts, payment confirmations, construction permits. Each one was proof that I'd built more than houses. I'd built the foundation they were now trying to bury me under. By noon, the table looked like a war map. Dates, signatures, numbers. I took a yellow marker and drew a single line through the word paid on each document. Not erased. Just reminded. The doorbell rang. It was the mailman carrying an envelope stamped with the county seal. Inside, copies of the venue permits I'd requested. My company name right there, next to Madison's father's signature as co-investor. He'd filed it under Madison Holdings LLC. Smart, but not smart enough. The original application listed me as financial guarantor for structural liability. That meant if a railing broke and someone fell, I'd be the one sued, not them. They'd kept my name on the risk and deleted it from the guest list. That was the kind of math I understood. I called Carson. Got the permits, I said. They kept my name on the liability line. That's leverage, she said. What do you want to do with it? Hold it, I said. Until they tell one more lie. She laughed softly. You're patient. I'm old, I said. Different label, same shelf. The next day, my neighbor Harold stopped by with his dog. Heard what they did to you, he said. You okay? I'm fine, I said. He nodded toward the pile of papers on my table. Doesn't look like fine. I'm turning pain into homework, I said. He whistled low. That's dangerous. Men like you, the quiet ones. You're the reason lawyers buy vacation homes. I smiled. Maybe it's time someone else paid for one. 3 weeks passed. Not a word from Ethan. Not a text. But news travels fast in small towns. I started hearing things from other contractors. Trent, Madison's father, had been bragging that he was expanding his dealership chain into commercial real estate. He'd even told one of my suppliers that he'd bought out Keller's old contracts. He hadn't. He'd forged amendments and used my company's reputation to get credit terms. When I called the supplier to confirm, the man sounded embarrassed. He said you gave him permission, Rob. I closed my eyes. Did he sign anything? Faxed document, he said. Looked old. Had your letterhead. I laughed quietly. It was old, I said. Stolen from my son's wedding folder. I hung up, printed the call log, and added it to evidence token number 2. Every silence builds a wall. Every wall needs bricks. That night, I drove out to the construction site they'd bragged about. A half-finished lakeside property, with steel beams still naked to the wind. A banner hung on the fence. Future home of Madison Estates Luxury Villas. Underneath, smaller letters, powered by Keller Construction Group. My name again. My liability. No permission. I parked across the road and took photos. Signage, invoices, delivery trucks with my old logo still on them. They hadn't even peeled it off, just painted over the phone number. The moonlight hit the sign like truth hitting arrogance. That was my moment of peace. Not satisfaction, not revenge. Just the clean sound of clarity snapping into place. I didn't call anyone. I went home and started writing. Letter to the county. This is to inform you that any use of the Keller Construction trademark in connection with the Madison Estates project is unauthorized. Attached are copies of the expired contract, original logo registration, and photographic evidence of misrepresentation. Letter to my bank. Cease all automatic debits related to subcontractor accounts under Keller Construction. Hold payments pending verification. Letter to Ethan. No accusation, no anger, just a copy of the permit showing my liability line. No explanation, no emotional bait, just facts. Paper cuts for liars. 2 days later, he showed up on my porch. He looked smaller, not physically, but morally. There's a posture men adopt when they realize love isn't enough to protect them from their choices. Dad, he said, voice dry. You reported the project? I reported my name being stolen, I said. He rubbed his jaw. Trent says this could bankrupt him. Maybe he should have invited the bank to the wedding, I said. He looked away. They said you're trying to ruin us. Son, I said, leaning forward. The only thing I'm trying to ruin is the idea that lying should be profitable. He didn't answer right away, then quieter. You're enjoying this. No, I said. But I'm finally speaking the only language they respect. Documentation. He exhaled, sat down on the porch step, and stared at the gravel. Mom would have told you to stop. She'd have told me to be kind, I said. Not blind. His eyes watered, but he blinked it away. They're calling you unstable, Dad. You know that, right? I built stability for 30 years, I said. Now I'm just collecting rent. He didn't laugh, but something in him cracked. Not loud, not visible, just real. I didn't know about the permits, he said. They told me it was all under their name. Now you do, I said, and you'll have to decide which name you want to live under. He stood, hesitating. What are you going to do? Nothing, I said. I've already done it. He frowned. Meaning? I pointed at the papers stacked neatly beside me. I sent copies to the county, the bank, and your lawyer. From here, it's just gravity doing its job. He swallowed. You really think this fixes anything? No, I said. But it stops the rot from spreading. He left without saying goodbye. I didn't take it personally. Some truths are too bright for immediate forgiveness. That night, I sat at my desk under the yellow light and wrote a single sentence across the top of a new page. Silence isn't the absence of war. It's the art of aiming before the first shot. I folded the paper, placed it under the folder labeled Strategy, and turned off the lamp. Outside, thunder rolled somewhere far but certain. I didn't flinch. I just whispered, "Let it rain." Because storms don't destroy builders. They reveal which houses were built honest. And mine, even if it's empty tonight, still stands. The phone started ringing at 7 the next morning. By 8, I'd stopped answering. First it was the county office, then the bank, then the venue manager, whose tone had shifted from confidence to prayer. Each call was a different key in the same song, panic. The county clerk's voice cracked halfway through the message she left. Mr. Keller, your name appears on multiple active permits under Madison Holdings LLC. We've frozen new applications until this is clarified. You may need to appear for a statement. Appear for a statement. Good. I like statements. I build mine in stone. By noon, the local paper ran a small piece buried under the weekend football schedule. Business identity dispute delays luxury housing project. County officials confirmed inconsistencies in the ownership of permits for a new lakeside development tied to Madison Holdings LLC. Sources say the name of a retired contractor, Robert Keller, was used without full authorization. No quotes, no drama, just facts. Dry enough to sting the people who live off perception. 2 hours later, my phone buzzed again. This time, Trent Madison himself. I let it ring twice before picking up. Robert, he said, trying for calm but landing somewhere between panic and PR. We've got a situation. Your little stunt. My little what? I said. Your little paper tantrum just cost us $2 million in delayed funding. The investors pulled back until the permits are clear. I'd say you should call the man whose name is on the paperwork, I said. But I guess that's me. He laughed. The kind of brittle laugh that belongs in a boardroom right before the floor gives way. Look, we both know how this works. You want a payout? Fine. Let's settle it quietly. I'll cut you a check, we'll sign an NDA, and you disappear. Win-win. You think this is about money? I asked. He hesitated. Everything's about money, Robert. Then that's why you'll never understand me. He tried one last swing. You're not young enough to start fights you can't finish. I smiled into the receiver. And you're not honest enough to start one you can win. Then I hung up. At sunset, I took my coffee out to the porch and waited. When you've lived long enough, you can feel a storm before the sky even darkens. The air thickens, conversations shrink. Sure enough, the first car pulled up just as the cicadas stopped singing. Ethan's silver truck, headlights cutting across the gravel. He didn't slam the door this time. He walked slower, like the ground had questions. They're saying you're suing them, he said. I haven't filed anything, I said. I just corrected the record. They're losing investors, Dad. Madison's dad says the project's dead if this doesn't clear. Then maybe the project should die before it kills what's left of your conscience. He rubbed his temples. Why are you doing this? I'm not doing anything, I said. I just stopped pretending. He looked tired, but not just from lack of sleep, from defending lies with muscles that weren't built for dishonor. They said you forged the permits, he said, almost whispering. That one hurt, not because it surprised me, but because it was exactly what I'd have done in his shoes if I'd believed their story first. Do you believe that? I asked quietly. He looked away. I don't know what to believe anymore. Then stop believing and start reading, I said, handing him the folder. Originals, stamped, signed, dated. That's my name. That's my license number. That's the line that says responsible contractor of record. Now tell me, where's yours? He flipped through the pages, his breathing shallow. Dad, this makes Trent look like a thief, I said. Because he is. He sank onto the porch step, eyes scanning the papers. The porch light flickered once, the bulb doing its own version of hesitation. He told me you'd ruin him out of spite, he said. Son, I said, sitting beside him. Spite's what you feel when you still care. I'm past that. What I'm doing now, this is cleanup. He nodded slowly, the truth settling in like dust on still air. I shouldn't have let them cut you out of the wedding. No, I said. You shouldn't have let them cut you out of yourself. The next day, Carson called. You made the paper, she said. I read it. More's coming. Reporters asking for comment. Wants to know why you stayed quiet so long. Tell her the truth, I said. Because I was busy building, she laughed. You know that'll end up as the headline, right? Then maybe people will remember that silence doesn't mean weakness. That night, I sat at my desk again. I opened the folder, checked every date, then added a fresh page titled Witness Statements. I listed everyone who could verify my involvement. Supplier, subcontractor, inspector, even the kid who delivered pizza to the site during framing week. One by one, I called them, not to beg, to verify. Most answered, surprised but supportive. Of course I remember you, Mr. Keller, one said. You were there every morning before sunrise? I thanked him and logged the call. By midnight, my evidence token was no longer a folder. It was a fortress. 3 days later, the follow-up story hit the front page. Local contractor's name misused in real estate scheme. County investigators confirmed forged documents linked to the Madison Estates development. We're reviewing potential civil violations, said County Clerk Amanda Ruiz. The contractor of record, Robert Keller, acted promptly and transparently. My phone lit up like a fireworks show. Text from Harold. You just made half this town choke on their brunch. Another from Gabriella, the bank's compliance officer I barely knew. I'm forwarding your article to corporate. They'll drop Madison's account by Monday. And finally, one from Ethan. I need to talk. Alone. He showed up after dark. No words at first. Just silence between two porch lights. Mine flickering, his headlights off. Dad, he said, voice low. You were right. I didn't need to be right. I said. I needed you to see. He handed me a flash drive. Emails from Trent. He used your logo and told me not to ask questions. Said it was branding synergy. I thought he meant partnership. I didn't realize he meant theft. I took the drive carefully, like it might burn. You kept copies? I did, he said. For once. That's the first honest thing you've done in months, I said. He smiled, ashamed and grateful all at once. What'll you do with them? Nothing yet, I said. Sometimes the best revenge is documentation with perfect timing. He nodded, and I could see the boy he used to be, the one who built crooked birdhouses and believed they'd hold forever. Mom would have been proud, he said. Maybe, I said. Or maybe she'd just tell us to finish what we start. The next morning I walked into the diner on Main Street for coffee. Heads turned, whispers followed. Not pity this time. Something else. Respect, maybe. Or fear disguised as respect. Trent was there, corner booth, his phone on speaker as he hissed into it, trying to keep his empire from melting. When he looked up and saw me, he froze. No smile this time, no handshake. Just awareness. Like a man finally realizing the storm he ignored has his address written on it. I ordered black coffee, paid in cash, and nodded once his way. He couldn't look at me. That was enough. I didn't need an apology. I needed that silence, the sound of power shifting back to where it belonged. That night, I backed up Ethan's flash drive onto 3 different devices, labeled each one with a piece of masking tape. Truth, copy A, copy B, copy C. Then I placed copy A in my safe, copy B in Carson's office, and copy C in my truck glove box, next to my old tape measure. I sat in the driver's seat for a while, listening to the quiet hum of the street. You can tell when a war is about to end, not because there's peace, but because the lies run out of breath. And that night, for the first time since the wedding, I slept without checking my phone. When the morning paper arrived, one last line stood out near the end of the article. Mr. Keller declined to comment, but provided all documents voluntarily. His statement to the press read only, "Justice doesn't shout." I didn't write that line for them. I wrote it for me. Because sometimes, the best thing you can build isn't a house or a legacy. It's a silence so solid, liars can't speak through it. The week after the article broke, silence had weight. Neighbors waved slower. Conversations in the diner stopped mid-sentence when I walked in. The truth makes people polite. Fear makes them careful. By Wednesday, a new story appeared online. Headline in bold, "Local contractors breakdown threatens family, businesses." The article quoted a close family source, claiming I'd harassed my son and fabricated documents out of resentment. There was even a line about mental instability following bereavement. They used my wife's death like a wrench. I didn't flinch. I just scrolled to the byline. Reporter's name, Heather Drayton. Publication, The Morning Ledger. A small-town paper with big ambitions and smaller ethics. The author's email sat neatly at the bottom, hdrayton@ledgerpress.com. I drafted a reply that wasn't for her. It was for the readers who'd one day find it in Discovery. Dear Ms. Drayton, please attach your editor to future correspondence. I am attaching certified copies of county permits, bank records, and notarized statements confirming the authenticity of my documentation. Should you or your source repeat these claims, I will treat it as actionable defamation. Respectfully, Robert Keller. No adjectives, no emotion, just ink and inevitability. Then I BCC'd Carson. She called within the hour, laughing softly. You've got timing, old man. I've got rhythm, I said, and a printer that still works. 2 days later, the same reporter published a correction at the bottom of the online piece. Editor's note. Following verification, some statements in this article have been amended for accuracy. That line, 15 words, hit Trent harder than any lawsuit could. Because the world doesn't need you to win loudly. It just needs to stop believing him. Saturday came with a strange calm. The air felt lighter, but my phone heavier. Ethan texted, "They're calling a press conference Monday. Trent's bringing lawyers. He's blaming you for investor losses." "Good," I replied. "Then he'll have to stand next to me when the truth talks." "What are you planning?" "Paperwork." He didn't reply. On Monday morning, the county building buzzed like a beehive. Cameras, microphones, reporters. The kind of crowd that smells blood and calls it journalism. Trent arrived first, surrounded by 2 lawyers and Madison holding her clutch like a moral compass that forgot north. When I walked up the steps, someone shouted, "Mr. Keller, any comment?" "Not yet," I said. "But you'll want to keep your recorders on." Inside, the press conference started with practiced outrage. Trent adjusted his cufflinks like he was auditioning for integrity. "My family," he said into the mic, "has been subjected to weeks of false allegations from a man struggling with reality. We respect Mr. Keller's service to our community, but unfortunately, grief can twist memory. We simply ask for privacy." I stood, not to interrupt, to exist. The cameras turned, clicks and hums chasing focus. I carried no folder this time, just a single manila envelope. "Since you're speaking about facts," I said, walking toward the podium, "let's read some." Trent's lawyer moved forward. "Sir, this isn't your... It's everybody's," I said, "because you forged everybody's trust." I placed the envelope on the table, slid it toward the clerk. County certified permits, original signatures, bank statements showing payment transfers from Keller Construction to Madison Holdings. Copies have been filed with the district attorney's office this morning. Gasps ripple differently than applause. They're quieter, but they carry further. Trent tried to laugh. "These documents, how do we know they're not fake?" I said, smiling. "Ask your son-in-law." Ethan stood at the back of the room, pale but upright. I hadn't told him to come, but he did anyway. He walked forward, reached into his jacket, and pulled out a flash drive. "Those are real," he said, voice steady. "I have the emails that match every signature. My father was used, and so was I." The room exploded, reporters shouting, flashes going off like lightning caught in glass. Trent's lawyers huddled, whispering like firefighters watching the fire start on their own shoes. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just looked at my son and nodded once. That was enough. The story aired that night on every local station. Contractor vindicated, forged permits confirmed. They played the clip of Ethan speaking more than mine, and I liked it that way. The world doesn't need more speeches from fathers. It needs more sons learning to tell the truth out loud. Within 24 hours, investors froze Madison Holdings accounts. The county suspended their business license. Trent's dealership page quietly replaced his photo with acting manager. By Thursday, he was calling again. "Robert," he said, the voice smaller now, more human. "You got what you wanted." "No," I said. "I got what was owed." "I'm finished," he said. "No," I said again. "You're finally equal." He hung up without another word. That was mercy enough. Later that week, Carson called. "You realize you could sue for damages?" "I don't want money," I said. "I want peace." "You earned both," she said. I thought about it for a long time that night. Not peace or money, but how quiet justice sounds when it's done breathing. I went into my garage, pulled down my old blueprints, and rolled them across the table. Not for nostalgia, for closure. I took a red pen and wrote across the top sheet, "Closed with integrity." Then I set it on fire in a metal bucket and watched the edges curl into ash. When the flames died, I found something unexpected in the quiet. Not revenge, not pride, but space. 2 days later, Ethan came by again. He looked lighter, like a man who'd set down a truth too heavy to carry alone. "They dropped the charges against me," he said. "Trent's taking the hit." "I know," I said. County called me. He sat down across from me, eyes red. You were right. About everything. I didn't want to be right, I said. I wanted you to see the cost of pretending. He nodded slowly. I sold my share in the project, paid back what I could. We're starting over, smaller, honest. Good, I said. Small builds better. He hesitated. Madison's gone back to her parents' house. I didn't react. Some endings don't need commentary. She took the furniture, he added, half smiling. Then you've got room for peace, I said. He laughed, the first real laugh in months. Mom would have loved that line. She probably wrote it, I said. We sat there in companionable silence. Outside, the wind brushed the oak trees like a tired apology. Before he left, he looked back at me. You're not angry anymore. Anger's loud, I said. I'm tired of noise. That night, I got an email from Heather, the reporter who'd smeared me weeks before. Mr. Keller, I owe you an apology. You were right about everything. Would you agree to an interview? Off the record, I want to tell your story right this time. I stared at the screen for a long time, then replied, no need for interviews. The truth already hired its own voice. Then I clicked send and closed the laptop. Outside, thunder rolled again. The clean kind. The kind that means the sky's done being angry. I walked to the porch, turned on the light, and hung a small frame above the door. My wife's handwriting from years ago. If you ever lose each other, find the version that still remembers love. Now, I think we finally had. When people ask me later how I won, I'll tell them the truth. I didn't. I just stopped losing quietly. Because silence doesn't mean retreat. Sometimes it's the sound of a man waiting for the right kind of echo. And when that echo comes, in courtrooms, in headlines, in the eyes of your son finally meeting your gaze again, it's not victory, it's restoration. The hearing room smelled like dust and discipline. Rows of folding chairs lined the back wall, filled with neighbors, reporters, and a few faces I hadn't seen since the wedding. The county seal glinted under the fluorescent lights, that familiar eagle holding arrows, quiet power, drawn but not fired. I took a seat near the front, folder in hand. Not the big one, just a slim envelope. Everything that needed to speak was already inside. At the far table sat Trent Madison, his lawyer beside him, whispering like he could outtalk gravity. Ethan sat 2 rows behind them, shoulders squared, hands clasped. A man trying to decide which name he still belonged to. The clerk called the session to order. Item 4. Keller vs. Madison Holdings. Matter regarding business identity, permit fraud, and misrepresentation. The words landed like hammers, deliberate and heavy. Trent's lawyer stood first, a man in an expensive suit and a cheap conscience. Ladies and gentlemen of the commission, my client maintains that any confusion regarding permits was purely administrative. There was no intent to deceive. Mr. Keller's emotional investment. Emotional? I said softly, not rising, just enough for the mic to catch it. I invested money. He stole paperwork. The lawyer tried to continue, but the chairwoman raised her hand. You'll have your turn, Mr. Keller. Please let counsel finish. He cleared his throat, avoiding my eyes. We sympathize with Mr. Keller's situation. Losing a spouse can make memory selective. We simply ask the board to consider that this may all be an unfortunate misunderstanding. The room rustled, the kind of collective exhale people make when they know a lie just walked in without knocking. The chairwoman turned to me. Mr. Keller, you may speak. I stood, slowly. The kind of movement that reminds you bones are older than anger. I don't have much to say, I began. Everything important's already written down. I placed the envelope on the table. The paper made a sound small enough to echo. That's the original permit with my signature, the payment receipts, and a notarized letter from the county inspector confirming I was on site during construction. You'll also find 2 certified photos showing Madison Holdings using my logo after my retirement, without consent. I looked at Trent. He stared back, jaw tight. The shine of his cufflinks doing all the talking. This isn't about money, I said. If it were, I'd have taken the check he offered to disappear. It's about a name. A man only gets one. You take it, you take everything he's ever built. The chairwoman nodded once. Thank you, Mr. Keller. But I wasn't done. When I started Keller Construction 35 years ago, I built houses that could survive storms. I taught my crew that every nail you drive is your name on the wall. That's what I gave my son. Not cash, not comfort. A standard. I turned slightly toward Ethan. He didn't move, but I saw his throat tighten. Somewhere along the way, that standard got traded for handshakes and champagne. So I'm not here to win. I'm here to record. Because truth doesn't vanish just because somebody with a louder microphone says so. The chairwoman adjusted her glasses. Noted. For the record, the county investigation has confirmed the documents submitted by Mr. Keller are authentic. The signatures under Madison Holdings were traced to an unauthorized digital copy. Gasps murmured across the room. Trent's lawyer scribbled something furiously. Additionally, she continued, we've received email correspondence from Mr. Ethan Keller verifying his father's statements and providing further evidence of forgery. Ethan stood, voice steady. I confirm that, ma'am. The files are real. My father's name was used without his knowledge. I have proof Trent Madison instructed staff to alter invoices and delete communication records. Trent shot him a glare sharp enough to cut glass. You ungrateful little... The chairwoman's gavel struck the desk. Mr. Madison, you will remain silent. Ethan didn't flinch. No, let him finish. He's been rehearsing that line for months. A ripple of nervous laughter spread across the room. Even the court reporter cracked a smile. I didn't. I just looked at my son. Not proud, not pitying. Just seeing him, finally standing where truth stands. The chairwoman cleared her throat. Given the evidence and corroboration, the county finds Madison Holdings in violation of Section 1422 of Business Representation Law. Fines will be assessed. Licenses revoked pending restitution. Furthermore, Mr. Keller's liability status will be cleared effective immediately. The room exhaled. I didn't. Trent's lawyer leaned in, whispering frantic numbers. Trent didn't listen. He just stared at me, like maybe this was still a poker game. You happy now? He said, not quietly. I turned toward him slowly. Happiness is for children, Trent. Adults get accountability. He looked away first. That's when you know it's over, not when the judge speaks, but when the liar can't. After the session, reporters crowded the steps outside. Cameras clicked like rain on tin. Mr. Keller, what's next for you? One asked. I paused on the bottom stair. Next? Probably breakfast? They laughed. Small, genuine. Someone shouted, You've become a local hero. I shook my head. No heroes here, just builders who kept their receipts. The clip went viral by noon. Memes, hashtags, interviews. People love quiet victories. They remind them decency still has teeth. By evening, my inbox was full. Messages from former clients, old workers, even strangers thanking me for standing up without yelling. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. That night, Ethan came over again, carrying 2 takeout boxes. I figured victory deserves dinner, he said. Justice deserves receipts, I corrected. He laughed, handing me a burger. Close enough. We ate on the porch, no words, just crickets and the sound of the wind moving through a life finally unclogged. After a while, he said, They're saying Trent might face charges. He should, I said. You're not going to press further? No, I said. I don't build on rubble, I just clear it. He nodded slowly. You ever miss Mom more on days like this? Every day, I said. But today, it feels like she's proud instead of worried. He smiled faintly. You know, the town's planning to name a scholarship after you. I raised an eyebrow. Scholarship? For trade school kids. The Keller Integrity Grant. I chuckled. Sounds like punishment disguised as charity. Maybe, he said, but it's a good punishment. We sat there until the stars came out, until the porch light flickered one last time, and finally held steady. The next morning, I returned to the hearing room. Empty now, quiet, chairs stacked against the wall. The janitor was sweeping. You left something yesterday, he said, pointing to the desk. It was my envelope. Inside, the last page I hadn't noticed before, the clerk's final note stamped in red. Case resolved, record closed. I held it for a moment, then placed it back on the table. Some things don't belong to you once they're finished. I turned to leave, but stopped at the door, looking back at the seal on the wall, the eagle, the arrows. For 30 years, I built things meant to last. But today, for the first time, I'd built something that couldn't be seen. A clean ending. Outside, the morning sun hit the courthouse steps like truth itself, uninvited, unfiltered, undeniable. I walked down those steps, slower than I came up them. Behind me, the doors swung shut with a click that sounded a lot like peace. The morning after the hearing, the sky over Cedar County looked washed clean. The air finally smelled like air again. Not smoke, not fear, not paperwork. I sat on my porch with black coffee and nothing left to prove. The world was quiet in that particular way it gets when truth has finally emptied the room. The mailbox rattled once in the wind. Inside was a small envelope, handwritten. No return address. Just Dad. I turned it over in my hands before opening it. I know you don't owe me another conversation, but I need to earn one. I'm starting a new job, not construction, not real estate, teaching. Community trade school in Austin called after the article. They want someone who knows both how to build and how to fail. Mom would have said that's the perfect mix. I'm sorry I forgot which name taught me what work really means. Ethan. The words blurred a little before I reached the end. Not tears, just the body finally relaxing after months of being steel. I folded the letter carefully, slid it under the old key hanging by the door. That key had once opened my station locker, later my workshop, then nothing. Now it guarded forgiveness. Around noon I drove into town. The diner was half empty, sunlight cutting lines across the counter. Harold looked up from his stool. Morning, hero. Morning, unpaid janitor, I said. He grinned. Heard your boys moving south. Folks are saying you two made peace. Not peace, I said. Boundaries. Peace grows there later if it wants. He nodded. You going to the scholarship ceremony tonight? I wasn't planning to. He leaned back. You should. Sometimes showing up after the fight's the loudest way to end it. That evening, the community center buzzed with small talk and folding chairs. A banner hung crooked above the stage. The Keller Integrity Grant, for those who build things that last. Someone had spelled integrity with an extra A. I didn't correct it. Perfection never built a house. Ethan was already there, sleeves rolled up, helping a kid test the microphone. When he saw me, he froze for a second, then smiled. Not nervous, not sorry, just human. You came, he said. I was told attendance improves the acoustics, I said. He laughed, then grew serious. Before they start, I wanted to... He glanced around the room. I wanted to thank you for not destroying everything when you could have. I didn't need to, I said. It was already collapsing. I just turned on the lights. He nodded. Still, you could have burned it all down. Son, I said, fire's for warmth, not revenge. You forget that, you lose both. He swallowed hard, eyes glassy. I wish Mom could see this. She does, I said, every time you tell the truth out loud. The MC called everyone to attention. Ethan stepped to the microphone, cleared his throat, and began reading from a note card that shook just slightly in his hand. Integrity isn't about being right first. It's about being honest last. This grant exists because my father taught me that a man's name isn't a title. It's a contract. And when you sign your name, you'd better mean it. Applause rolled through the room like a slow wave. I didn't clap. I just watched. That was enough music for me. After the ceremony, a few townspeople came up to shake my hand. One of the old inspectors, the same man who'd signed my permit 30 years ago, said, "You know, Robert, not many folks get to outlive a rumor." "I didn't outlive it," I said. "I replaced it," he chuckled. "That's one hell of a trade." Outside, dusk settled over the parking lot, soft and forgiving. Ethan walked me to my truck. "So, you'll keep the company name?" he asked. "No," I said. "Let it rest. Keller Construction built what it needed to, a reminder. The rest of my life doesn't need a logo." He smiled. "Then what'll you build next?" I looked at the horizon, the faint line where the road bent toward the hills. "Maybe a porch that faces the sunrise instead of the past." He nodded, eyes shining. "I'd like to help." "You already did," I said. "You showed up." We stood there until the lights in the community hall went out one by one. The town quieted, but not with awkwardness, with respect. Before he left, he pulled something from his pocket. It was the small wooden birdhouse he'd built when he was 12. Crooked nails, uneven roof, faded paint. "I kept it all these years," he said. "Guess I'm returning what I borrowed." I took it carefully. The edges were splintered, but it still held together. "You built this wrong," I said softly. "I know," he said, "but it never fell apart." "Neither did we," I said. Back home, I hung the birdhouse under the porch light, right beside the old key and his letter. The three of them swung gently in the wind. Memory, forgiveness, and something that finally felt like peace. I poured one last cup of coffee and sat back in the chair that creaked the same way it always had. The night hummed low, steady, alive. For the first time in years, I didn't think about the past as something I had to fix. I thought about it like wood grain, imperfect but honest. When the porch light flickered, I didn't replace it. Some things are allowed to tremble after standing through storms. If anyone ever asks what justice looks like, I'll tell them this. It looks like a man sitting quietly on his own porch, not waiting for apologies, just letting the air move through the spaces he fought to clear. Because the loudest sound in any redemption story is silence that finally feels safe. The next morning was quiet enough to hear the world beginning again. The air had that smell it gets after rain, new but not clean, just real. I brewed coffee the slow way, the way my wife used to. 2 scoops, 1 stir, let it bloom, wait. Patience makes everything taste like forgiveness. Outside, the birdhouse swung gently under the porch light, the same one Ethan had hung the night before. It wasn't perfect. One side leaned, the paint had peeled, the nails were too proud. But the wind passed through it like it belonged there. Some mistakes deserve to stay visible. A truck drove by. Not fast, not loud, just passing. For the first time in months, I didn't check if it was coming for me. Around noon, the mail came. An envelope, this time from Cedar County office. "Mr. Keller, as part of your settlement and testimony, the board has approved your recommendation for mentorship under the Keller Integrity Grant. We invite you to speak to the first group of apprentices next month. Respectfully, Amanda Ruiz, County Clerk." I read it twice, then laughed. Not loud, just enough that the silence had to make room for it. After all this, they wanted me to talk again. The irony didn't bother me. Maybe some lessons deserve to be told once the shouting stops. I set the letter down and looked at the workbench in my garage, still covered in sawdust and half-finished things. On the far shelf sat an old cedar plank, the last one from the project Ethan and I started before he moved out. I pulled it down, brushed it clean, and started carving. Not fast, not perfect. Just deliberate. By sundown, I'd burned 3 words into its face. Silence builds. I didn't know if it was a lesson or a warning. Maybe both. That evening, I drove to the lake. The same one behind the wedding venue, the one that started it all. The site was quiet now. Half-built frames stood empty against the sunset, skeletons of a dream that ran out of lies. I parked, got out, and walked the gravel path until I reached the dock. The boards creaked under my boots. My boards, the ones I'd paid for, now untethered from deceit. I pulled the small cedar plaque from my bag and set it on the railing. Then beside it, I laid the brass key. One for the silence that protected me. One for the doors I no longer needed to open. The sun fell slow behind the trees, turning the water gold. I didn't say anything. Words had already done their job. After a while, a car door closed behind me. Ethan's voice carried across the wind. "You came back here." "Had to make peace with the view," I said. He walked up beside me, hands in pockets, eyes following the water. "They're tearing it down next week," he said. "Whole thing. County's reclaiming the land." "Good," I said. "Maybe something honest can grow here." He nodded, quiet. Then he noticed the plaque and the key. "You leaving those?" "Yeah," I said. "Let the wind decide what keeps what." He smiled, small and steady. "I think Mom would have liked that." "She always liked clean finishes," I said. He hesitated, then reached into his jacket pocket. "I brought something too." It was a small wooden dowel, about the size of a pencil, carved with rough initials. "EK. From my first day teaching," he said. "Kid couldn't hammer straight. So we made a handle for him to practice grip. Thought maybe we'd keep it here, start a new foundation." He placed it beside my plaque and the key. The three objects sat there in a row, catching the last of the light. Memory, silence, and beginning. We stood there until the water turned black and the crickets started their shift. Ethan finally said, "You think people change?" I thought about it. "No," I said, "but they remember who they were supposed to be. That's close enough." He nodded, eyes glinting. "You're not going to write about this anywhere, are you?" "Already did," I said. "In wood." He laughed. "Then I guess it'll last." "Maybe," I said. "But even if it doesn't, the lesson will." We turned to go. The air had cooled, the kind that makes you put your hands in your pockets and smile for no reason. Halfway up the hill, I looked back one last time. The plaque caught a flicker of moonlight. The key swung once, and the wooden dowel rested perfectly between them. A quiet trinity of everything we'd survived. When I got home, the porch light flickered again, just once, then held steady. I didn't replace it. I let it hum in that soft, uncertain way, like even electricity was learning how to breathe again. I sat down, poured the last of the coffee, and opened my notebook. For months, I'd filled its pages with notes, evidence, legal codes, timestamps. Now I turned to the final page and wrote only one sentence. "Justice doesn't shout. It teaches." Then I closed the book and placed it under the birdhouse. Tomorrow, I'd mail my reply to the county. I'd go talk to those apprentices, not as a man wronged, but as proof that truth can walk out of a courtroom and still find its porch. Because stories like mine don't end with revenge. They end with room. Room for new beginnings. Room for peace. Room for someone else to speak without fear. The night deepened, the stars steady, the house breathing soft around me. And for the first time since that locked wedding door, I realized something simple and final. I hadn't lost a family. I'd rebuilt one. Different shape, stronger frame, no noise. Just truth. And truth, if you build it right, never falls. Maybe that's all justice really is. Not about winning, but about learning how to stand still when the storm stops. If you've ever been in Robert's place, if you've ever had to choose between peace and pride, tell me what you would have done. Would you have walked away sooner? Or stayed long enough to set things right? Leave your thoughts down below. I read every single one of them. And before you go, Help this story reach more people who might need to hear it. Hit that subscribe button. It's free for you, but it means the world to me. Thank you for watching, and for believing that quiet justice still matters.